For Hype Plus, it's your boy K-Rob. In the 80s, Eddie Murphy was on fire. Known as the original comic rock star, he ruled the stage with his stand-up and on a small screen, with Eddie Murphy single-handedly resurrecting Saturday Night Live. From SNL, he transitioned to the big screen with hit movies, Paramount's 48 Hours, and Trading Places. Paramount was so satisfied with the outcome of the two movies, they wanted to stay in business with Eddie. So on November 1st, 1984, it was announced by the New York Times that Murphy signed a contract with Paramount for a 5-picture deal at the young age of only 23 years old. Signed on June 1983, immediately after Trading Places, rumored to be worth $15 million, it also gave Murphy's production company full control over the films and other projects he will be developing. Murphy said the contract would allow him to expand as a filmmaker. "I'd like to be more like Woody Allen," Murphy said, adding that he wants to write, produce, direct, and star in the films. These projects included the cultural phenomenon Coming to America, well-beloved romantic comedy Boomerang, and the cult classic comedy Harlem Nights. The making of both Coming to America and Boomerang have been highly publicized since their release, but Harlem Nights not so much. So here's things you did not know about Harlem Nights. The story goes, Eddie was inspired with the idea of Harlem Nights by his uncle Ray, who owned a nightclub called Sugar Ray's, and Murphy always expressed interest in doing a period piece. Uncle Ray has been very vocal on how he helped Eddie come up with the concept for the film. "I owned a bar in Brooklyn called Sugar Ray's, and I used to tell Eddie the stories about when I ran with the Mafia, that Donnie Brasco and all of them. In 3 weeks, Eddie wrote the movie Harlem Nights. The movie was like real, what really happened back in those days. I'm proud to say that my nephew has immortalized me between the movies and the people I've met in Hollywood. I think it's the most wonderful thing that could ever happen to somebody who comes from the projects." Stolen script accusations. Whenever something is successful, there's bound to be a lawsuit claiming copyright infringement soon to follow. On February 28, 1990, the New York Times would announce that a Long Island man was in the process of suing Eddie Murphy for allegedly stealing a screenplay that he wrote and used the basis for it for the plot of Harlem Nights. Michael Green said his agent in 1988 asked him to write properties for Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor. Green submitted a script called A Halloween to Remember, but was rejected without returning the copies of the screenplay. Then Green started to hear rumbles that the Harlem Nights screenplay sounded like his. Murphy could not immediately be reached for a comment on the allegations. Green's attorney, Stephen Lugham, said both Green's screenplay and Harlem Nights, whose author is listed as Murphy, starts with an 8-year-old boy who was orphaned and raised by the underworld characters. The scene of both screenplays is Harlem, and both have a corrupt Italian police officer. We are not saying the two scripts are identical. Clearly there have been changes, but some similarities are nothing less than mind-boggling. There was a $35 million compensatory figure named in the court papers. Lugham said the amount of damages Green could have been awarded will be based on the earnings from Harlem Nights. The film has grossed $70 million, Green said. The studio would eventually end up settling the case. Varied filming experience. The movie is famously known for starring 3 generations of comedy icons. Eddie looked up to Richard Pryor, Pryor looked up to Redd Foxx, and at 67, 49, and 28, the men were able to say that they are very similar but still unique in their approach, which is what helped to make their working relationship successful. In a Rolling Stone interview, Pryor and Fox had this to say: "It's turning out to be more pleasant than I expected. Murphy is wise enough to listen to people. I see him be very patient with the actors. It's not a lark to him. He's really serious. He's on top of the world and he's doing a hell of a job. He sure knows how to handle people with sensitivity. He'll come over to your side and give a private direction. He never embarrasses anyone. You walk around here and look at the people. Have you ever in your life seen this many black people on a movie set? I haven't." Murphy went out of his way to hire a predominantly black crew. In a 1990 interview with Spike Lee, Murphy had this to say about his experience on the film: "It wasn't a pleasurable experience. I just wanted to direct, just to see if I could do it. And I found out that I can't, and I won't do it anymore. And the biggest thing is I didn't enjoy doing it. The problem with Harlem Nights wasn't the directing as much it was the writing of it. It was just written up. And that's because I threw it together real quick. And then it was disappointing because Richard wasn't the way I thought Richard was going to be. I thought it would be like a collaborative thing. I would get to work with my idol. And then it would be like, this is great. But Richard would come to set, say his lines, and leave. It wasn't like a collaborative thing." And in a later interview, he would also go on to say, "That movie was a blur. It was Richard Pryor, Robin Harris, all comedians. I remember Richard and Redd Foxx laughing off stage during the whole movie. The funniest was off camera. We're all just crying. Redd was a really funny dude. he would have the set screaming all the time. But afterwards, it was like, whoa, that's a lot of work. I was really young when I did it. I had one foot in the club and one foot on set. A lot of shit going on. It's amazing it came together. He also said he didn't know Pryor was sick at the time. He was sick with MS by then, but nobody knew what was going on. And I was like a puppy to him, because he was my idol. Hey, let's go make this movie. I never put it together it was happening until afterwards. So it was kind of sad, that part of it. Sexual harassment accusations. The film would also feature an all-star supporting cast that included Arsenio Hall, Thomas Michael Ford, Miguel A. Nunez Jr., Charlie Murphy, Robin Harris, and last but not least, Jasmine Guy. However, Guy was not the original choice for the role of Dominique LaRue. It was actress Michael Michelle. Guy replaced Michelle after being fired during production. According to Eddie, she wasn't working out. Michelle said in reality, she was fired for rejecting Murphy's romantic advances. So in 1989, Michelle filed a lawsuit worth $75 million. Murphy denied the charges, saying that he had never even had a private conversation with her. After signing the Harlem Nights contract, Michelle showed up for rehearsal at the Paramount lot. At first, Murphy was cordial, says Michelle, but by the second day, his attitude shifted. I was sitting reading my script. Eddie taps me on my shoulder and says, "Bravo, you deserve an award for not even looking at me, Michael. Good, real good." And Michelle laughed it off. I wasn't being unfriendly. I admired him. He yells, speak up, I can't hear you," angrily. Yet at the next rehearsal on April 7th, Michelle says Murphy asked me out, when he then tried to fondle her and caress her. She said no and stormed off. After being let go, Paramount offered Michelle a healthy severance pay, but she declined, refusing to free Paramount of their responsibility of the accusations. Murphy responded in a People's Magazine interview by calling the accusations absurd and totally false. "My integrity and professionalism are being attacked." Murphy's then manager, Robert Wachs, threatened a countersuit. "Women throw themselves at him," says Wachs. "Why would he need to do this?" Eddie felt her attitude was antagonistic. She did not fit into the movie's healthy environment. The lawsuit was eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Mixed reception and theater fiasco. Harlem Nights was theatrically released on November 17, 1989. The movie debuted at #1, grossing over $16 million, with the film being shown in over 2,000 theater screens. During the first 3 days, it set a record for pre-holiday fall openings. Despite its total gross being $95 million against a $30 million budget, the studio considered it a flop, comparing it to movies like Coming to America and Beverly Hills Cop 2. Unfortunately, during the movie's opening weekend, a Michigan customer decided to shoot inside a movie theater. He injured 2 people before he was killed by the police in the parking lot. After that, the American 8 Theater, where the shooting took place, became the first theater in the world to install metal detectors. Patrons had to pass through in order to enter. It caused quite a controversy at the time, leading some to claim that the film advocated violence. Actress Jasmine Guy said, "Racism is what led people to say that." She noted the other films that came out during that time, like Lethal Weapon, had the same amount of violence, but were not accused of advocating violence. If there's a fight at McDonald's, what does that have to do with McDonald's? If there's a fight at the Giants Stadium, are you going to blame the Giants? Of course not. It's not about Eddie Murphy's movie, legacy, and impact. Since its release, Harlem Nights has gone on to be considered a comedy cult classic, with some of the most quotable lines often referenced to this day. Quotes and audio from the film can be heard in several songs throughout the years. People can be seen all over social media having parties with the Harlem Night theme. Busta Rhymes and Monique even recreated the iconic scene where Quick gets in a fight with Vera Walker and shoots her in the pinky toe for the music video to the hit 2002 song Pastor Cavassier Part 2. The movie is so beloved that some of our biggest comedic talents today, like Kevin Hart, hopes and wants to do a film of its magnitude, showcasing a wide variety of comedic talent. So despite a couple of production issues, including Murphy's filling during the making of the film and lawsuits, it's gone on to be a beloved classic that pretty much everyone who's watched it or involved had nothing but great memories of it in hindsight. That's all you can ask for as a filmmaker and a creative. Stay up to date with the latest news and comedy by subscribing here to our YouTube channel, follow Comedy Hype across all of our social media, and look out for our new original content on our new streaming service. For Hype Plus, it's been your boy K-Rock.